Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the book club. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm your Captain Toby Eunice. Make sure your seat backs are forward and your tray tables are in the upright and locked position, because we are about to talk about flying. Yay.
Well, and we're back with housekeeping. Let's get started with thanking our moderators for our channel are Jimmy Fast, Joel Lewicki, Jason Eunice, and Brian Eagle. If you would like to be a moderator, please send us an email at gypsieskiss@gmail.com and let us know, and we'll send you the information to get you started. Our presentation today is from The Thrill of the Chase, Chapter 12, My Brother Being Skippy.
I think I have that slide for you.
Do we?
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Yes. Forrest Fenn Memoirs Book Club, Thrill of the Chase, Chapter 12, My Brother Being Skippy. And that's located on pages 50 through 53. And what are we drinking today? We have some wine.
We do. I got this. I know you love Block. You like Love Block better. But I got this bottle of Oyster Bay, New Zealand, Sauvignon Blanc. Very good. Very rich.
Rich, huh?
Yeah, I like it.
All right.
To what?
To 2,400 subscribers.
2,400 subscribers. Thank you
Yay.
very much.
Thank you.
Good, but not Love Block.
It's good. I like it.
I like it. I like it. Hand me the pamphlet, the whatever we're calling
And the spoon?
it. And the spoon.
A spoon?
So stick around after the end of chat today. We've got a giveaway, and today's giveaway is my Aunt Lucy Delgado's book, Comidas de New Mexico. It's recipes that my family and I still use. And I will autograph the photographs since I shot those photographs back in the 70s, believe it or not, when I was like 6. No, I wasn't.
Was she aunt by marriage or?
She was my mother's sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, aunt by marriage. But man, she had more personality.
Sister. Your mother's
My
sister.
mother's-
That was family.
Yeah, we're
You
talking.
said by marriage.
Oh, I'm
That would
sorry.
mean that she married in like the Tejana auntie.
Oh no, that's Aunt Linda. I had a crush on Aunt Linda. And then along with that, we're gonna, Sean gave me this decorative spatula. It has San Pasquale, the patron saint of the
Did
kitchen.
she paint these by hand, or how does she do
Well,
that?
okay, so it's paint. She paints the original, scans it, and then makes prints from it, and that's actually a print you can see.
Also like a decoupage.
Yeah, decoupage. That's what I couldn't remember. And this one has a Spanish saying on it.
Oh, and she's like,
Pero que-
she's doing lasers on this now. See,
Yeah.
I have one that she had the painted words on.
Right, she had it. Now
she's doing
now it's all about the
lasers.
laser thing.
Oh.
So the laser on this one says, "En esta cocina yo mando," which means in this kitchen I'm in charge.
I guess that's for hitting people when they
Yeah,
come
and
into
then
your kitchen. Huh?
spank it Get your hand away from the bollitos.
And Toby probably already told you last time, but the pictures are the ones he took. He's the photographer on that book.
And
So very cool, huh?
Like I said, I was, I don't know, 5 or 6 at the time.
5 or 6 years
I was
old?
Very talented, yeah.
Sure you were. I don't think so.
Okay, so I think
They
what
were
I'm
black
gonna
and
do,
white photos
Yeah.
back then. That's all you
back
had.
then. No, we had
When you
color.
were 5 or 6?
Yeah, 5 or 6 we had color.
I didn't even have color when I was that old. Come on.
We had color. I'm going to switch this back to full frame here.
And we're going back in time.
Back in time. Okay, you ready?
Let's make an ooh sound. Oh. It wasn't exactly a back in time sound, was it?
You were just dying to use that.
I know. Let's get started.
I'm perspiring. I don't know why. It's not that hot in here, is it?
It's going to be hot
Okay,
today.
so we are going to be covering Thrill of the Chase, Forrest Fenn memoir number 1, Thrill of the Chase, chapter 12, My Brother Being Skippy. We're going to cover that. The photographs are relatively nondescript. The one on the back page is Skippy holding a small dead fish in his mouth, indicating
like
how,
he's a seal or something.
indicating how different he was. And then the front one is Skippy, the two Marvins, Marvin Sr. and Marvin Jr., in a photo that looks like they're looking off camera, but from experience, I know what they're really doing is they're looking at the person who's taking the primary shot. And this shot is the secondary person with what I would call one of those waist-high brownies, the ones that you have to look down to see what you're shooting. And could have even been Fenn, considering that at waist height.
Short, yeah.
He's short, so it could have been Forrest taking the secondary picture. So,
and it's his Skippy's high school graduation photo.
Right. And
read what the caption says.
Yeah, the caption says, Skippy on his high school graduation, you can see that he hated all 4 things, the tie, the smock. Oh, I covered it up with one of my notes here. Hang on. Skippy on his high school graduation day, you can see that he hated all 4 things, the hat, the tie, the smock, and the event. Father, on the other hand, that's my father was proud. As I'm sure any father whose eldest son is graduating from high school was proud. I wonder if Skippy went to college.
I don't know. We don't hear about that.
Yeah, we don't hear about colleges.
Other than that, Fenn went with his friends.
Yeah.
And tried to sneak in, but he couldn't afford it. So I would imagine they probably couldn't afford it if he didn't get a scholarship.
So I think what I'm going to do is hold aberrations till the end, or I'm not even sure they're aberrations, the curiosities. It's going to be better if I turn this right side up. It'll be easier.
It doesn't matter. You're not reading that part. Or yes, you are. Never mind.
You ready?
I am.
Yeah.
Let's get started.
All right.
Who else is ready?
Let's see what we got here.
Who else is ready?
Oh. Yeah, we have to remind them at chat time. Oh. Okay, so a lot of activity in the room. We'll catch up with them in a little bit. All right, this is chapter 12, My Brother Being Skippy, of Fenn's first memoir, The Thrill of the Chase, on pages 50 to 53 of the book. Starting with page 50, paragraph 1, quote, My brother, Skippy, was always doing things that I thought were both atrocious and astonishing. He was kind of a god to me, unquote.
You want to read the definition for atrocious?
Yeah, which is the second time this week, in the past 7 days, that word has come up. Did I mention that to you, or did you say it? Well, I'll talk about it in just a minute.
Okay.
Atrocious, horrifying or wicked, or of a very poor quality, extremely bad or unpleasant. Synonyms, appalling, dreadful, or terrible. Fenn defines his brother as a rule breaker. Am I supposed to read this part?
No.
Okay.
But you can if you want.
No, go ahead.
You were going to tell me about atrocious.
Yeah, somebody pulled up a quote from Fenn in one of the forums in which he referred to the act of hiding the treasure as having just done something atrocious.
Huh.
And so there's a lot of little funny interpretations of that. And if you and of course what followed was people using the dictionary definition of atrocious. And my mother used it often. And when she used it, I don't think it had the same definition. It had more of a definition that I would associate with somebody that was mischievous. Right. Like Toby, he's my oldest, but he's the most atrocious of my children. And it wasn't that I was horrifying, wicked, or appalling. It's that I was mischievous and rebellious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird.
So I'd like to think that in the book, as he's referring to his brother, he's using the alternative Fenn definition of atrocious rather than the dictionary
More
definition.
like outlandish.
Yeah. Rebellious, outlandish, a lot of other words, but it was a fill-in word. And I remember very distinctly my mother using it as a fill-in word to describe things. It's like, I was going to say, never mind. I was about to get political, but I'm not.
Okay, we won't go there.
Go ahead.
So Fenn defines his brother as a rule breaker who surprises everyone around him with outlandish antics and then expresses his great admiration of those traits. So he likes that his brother is outlandish.
Outlandish. Mischievous. The more I read about Fenn, and actually I came to this conclusion years ago, I think the prominent characteristic of Fenn is this mischievousness. He's talented in a lot of different ways. He's definitely street smart. He's definitely educated smart, as you would in a pilot or in business. But I think the most prominent characteristic of the man is mischievousness.
Mm-hmm.
Besides, I like saying that word.
I guess you do, because you've said it 10
3
times
times
already.
Okay, here we go. Page 50, paragraph 2. When Skippy crawled, a quote, when Skippy crawled out of the wreckage, my father and I rushed up to congratulate him on his accomplishment. We were so proud because someone swore that the flying machine had actually lifted an inch or so off the ground. Skippy later said, quote, what did you expect for a free admission, unquote. He was like that. And then he was off to another adventure, unquote.
And then it goes into the next part.
Oh, I'm sorry. He never lost his inventiveness or his originality and was the most intuitive person I ever knew.
Well, not only was Forrest excited and proud of his brother for being the center of attention of the entire neighborhood for his inventiveness, his father was proud as well. He also remarks that Skippy was the most intuitive person he ever knew, but neglects to explain what that means to him. Forrest has said that he's not religious, but probably the most spiritual person that you'd meet. His brother was the most intuitive, and imagination is more important than knowledge. Forrest Fenn has demonstrated a love for holding and touching those things that come to us from the distant past and were used by ancient peoples. He is not content to simply look or study them. He learns more by holding and touching them, as if he can sense the people and place where they originate from. The intrinsic and esoteric knowledge to be gained by imagining and intuiting the history of the piece of art or artifact are what make them special to Fenn. What can we glean from this to inform us about his special place?
It's a good question. I have a thing about a quote, and I'm not sure whether I dreamed it or whether Fenn actually said it about how the objects. Maybe somebody could pull this up. Eric Schmidt, where are you?
Are you there?
Am I making this up, or did Fenn actually say something about the objects in his home being representative of a very specific time in natural history, and that he connected with them, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure I'm making that up or not, but it sounds very much like what you've written here. Page 53, paragraph 1. One summer, when he was still a teenager, he disappeared into Idaho for a couple of days. Then one morning, he called and asked us to go out to Hebgen Lake, because he was flying in and was going to land on the water. Never mind that he didn't graduate from flying school.
This is the second story in this short chapter where Skippy is described as flying an aircraft of some sort. He also mentions twice, once in the text and once in the photo caption, that his father was proud of Skippy. This must have affected Fenn to the degree that he chose to join the Air Force and volunteered for pilot training so he could be more like Skippy and his father would be proud of him too. And then we have questions to ponder. Would you like to ponder those?
I'd like to, very much. Questions to ponder. What does Fenn mean when he refers to Skippy as intuitive? Could focusing on the spiritual, intuition, and imagination help us to understand Fenn and his treasure poem? What can we guess about Fenn's special place that coincides with what we are told is special to him? So this is a conversation that we were having at the beginning of the week about this focus on the spiritual, the intuitive, and the imaginative. 3 words that I'm not necessarily sure that if I were to go back through my transcripts of each of the books and search those words, I'm not sure he would find them. But I think he's very much in tune with those ideas, and I think there's a struggle, a conflict inside Fenn between those elements of his personality, the spiritual. You're smiling, and I know why you're smiling.
Because I'm a smiley person.
Yeah. So the conflict I see in Fenn is the conflict between the yin of the spiritual, the intuitive, and the imaginative, and the practical of getting to someplace on time or producing revenue or those kinds of things, and caring for his family. Those things are the practical side of him that he's done a really good job of accomplishing. But I believe there's an internal conflict between the necessity for those practical, the evolution of the practical side of him, and this other side that is spiritual, intuitive, and imaginative. And I was surprised to hear him refer to Skippy as the most intuitive person he had ever known. And the reason is I feel like part of this is to remind us that Fenn is even more intuitive, and Fenn is even better a pilot, as if to say, here's my brother Skippy, but remember, I'm the guy that did this, and I'm the guy that flew this, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, part of the conflict inside of him not only is this conflict between the yin of spiritual, intuitive, and imaginative, and the yang of practicality, it's also representative of the conflict between he and his older brother. The yin of, I love him, he's godlike, and he's the most intuitive man I've ever known, and the practical of, but boy, did he do such crazy things, up to and including dying in water, that he was comfortable with. So this particular chapter to me was representative of the conflicts, the psycho. I don't want to say psychological. I'm not a psychiatrist, but the conflict that the men of Fenn's caliber, men like Fenn, who maybe are artistic on one side and have the responsibilities of practicality and raising a family on the other side, experience and go through life experiencing and find and hope one day that they'll be able to resolve all that. And I'm willing to say at this point that establishing the treasure hunt and the thrill of the chase, like Fenn has, is really an expression, an explosion of an expression of that yin side, the intuitive, the imaginative, and I was going to use the spiritual, but I'm going to use the impractical instead.
Well, let me just inform you that in life coaching, we learned that there are 4 systems that make up every body. And those 4 systems are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Mm-hmm. Whether or not we recognize our spiritual side doesn't mean we don't have it. It just means it's out of balance because we're not open to it. It's there, whether we know it, realize it, admit to it or not. We all have a spiritual system within us. So he is just acknowledging that, I think, and it shows us balance between the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual.
And by the way, when I use the word conflict, I don't mean it in a negative way, as in as in war, that kind of conflict. I mean the id, the thing that every person has in them, the conflict between the practical and the artistic, or the conflict between the love and expressions of anger, etc., etc. So we all have conflicts within us. And I don't mean it in a negative way. We all have to deal with those conflicts, and eventually, as we go from children into adults, the conflicts become more and more tangible, and eventually we do have to deal with them. I know I had to deal with mine. There's another phrase for how people describe that. Demons. He has to deal with his demons. It's not dealing with your demons. It's dealing with the conflicts that arise from being living a life as a normal human being. You're going to experience those conflicts, and you're going to have to deal with them. You're going to have to handle them. You're going to have to manage them. You're going to have to balance them, because we all have them. So there were a couple of weird things for me. I'm not sure they're actually aberrations. I do want to point out that the subtitle on this is the address of their temple home, the 1413 North Main Street, and you can actually Google that, and you'll find the empty piece of a photograph, a satellite photograph of the empty. Actually, you can 3D it because the Google car has been through there. You'll see the spot on which their home once resided. It was burned down, so they cleared the property. I don't know who owns the property, whether he still owns it or not. I don't think he does. And you'll see the concrete steps. I think the concrete steps remain. So the other thing that that kind of bothered me as a former holder of a private pilot's license, the idea that an untrained teenager could fly and land an aircraft on a lake. I spent a lot of time getting my landing on a normal runway correct. So I don't know whether this is a story that Fenn expanded on. Maybe somebody else was flying the aircraft, but it was Skippy that promised to bring it in and land it, et cetera, et cetera. It just was kind of, in that sense, beyond the pale for me as a former pilot. And I guess I'm surprised at Fenn being not only just a pilot, but a jet fighter pilot. It's in a very exclusive club, that he would say something like that and go like, that to me was curious. The second thing that was curious to me were some of the references to distances and heights. He mentions that Hebgen Lake is at 6,000 feet altitude. It's not. It's at there's several benchmarks along the shoreline and in the 6,500 to 6,600 range. And then he talks about the one fisherman who says, if you can't take a plane off because of the altitude at 6,500 feet.
In 15 feet of water.
In 15
feet.
miles of water.
15 miles, yeah.
Well, you've got to take off in a straight line. There is no such thing as a convoluted takeoff. Right. And although Hebgen Lake, from literally one end of the other where it drains to the other end where it fills, may be 15 miles, the straight line distance that you could take off is closer to about 7.5 miles. Not that that's going to help you, because if you can't take off in 15.5 miles, you certainly can't take off in 7.5 miles. But those are two little, I won't call them aberrations, I'll call them idiosyncrasies. How's that?
Inconsistency?
Well,
it was funny that popped out at me? Because I was reading that first part was, he was kind of a god to me, and then he starts the next sentence, back in temple, and I was like, wait, God in the temple? And I'm like, wait, what temple? Oh, Temple, Texas. Texas. Because immediately my mind went to temple, I was like, God, temple, what's there? Probably nothing, but it popped out at me anyway.
When I came back to from overseas, the first assignment I had before I went east was Fort Hood, Texas. And outside of Fort Hood is Killeen. And at that time, this was in the early 70s. And Killeen was pretty much an army town there. You got off base and you could find any variety of entertainment that you needed to discover. But
it's a politic way to put it.
Yeah, but when you went to church in temple. Because temple that's where the good people were.
I see. Interesting.
I actually lived in a town called Florence, which was halfway between Killeen and Austin. University of Texas.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see.
We do have a lot of Texans out there, so I'm sure they know just what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Y'all.
All right, so let's transition out for just that's good. So
that was our transition.
We're going to start getting into the chat and answering some of your questions. We'll try to answer all of them. I'd like to keep to the book. I'm sure you have this. This is really for another short chapter. It does produce a lot of questions. It produced a lot of questions for me. I'm sure it produced a lot for you. But before you do that, keep in mind that at the bottom of your screen, you're going to find a icon, $sign icon. That's for Super Chat. If you'd like to make a contribution to our project, that's just what I like calling it, project. You can use Super Chat to do that. You can start as low as $1 and go as high as $500. The benefit is that if you have a question, it highlights your question and raises it to the top of the queue. And Shelley and I keep track of that and make sure your question gets answered. Although we would rather you ask the question to take advantage of your investment
status.
Your status.
Investment's good.
Investment. You don't have to. If you just want to contribute to our project and keep us moving along here and letting us buy
more wine.
More wine. Please do. Okay. So I'm going to switch back to full frame, and then let's go to your chat screen.
My chat screen, not your chat screen.
It's your chat screen.
I thought it was ours. We share the
I
chat.
just like the way that you do it. I'm just going to sit here and watch
Alrighty then.
Watch you be a master of the chat.
Alrighty then.
You ready?
Here we
Okay,
go.
Here we go.
Is that it?
I'm scrolling up. There we go.
All right. Let's say hello to all the people in the room, including William Ortiz. Hello. Eric Schmidt is here. Yay. Deborah Jensen from Nolens. Journeyman. Hi. JC. Going to be a good one. All right. Yes, it is. Robert Walker. Cheers. Dr. Brown in Colorado. Moderators are the best. That's right.
We like to think so. We believe so.
We are so happy they're here all the time. It just makes our lives so much easier. Gage Cockerham. Hello. Bill Cross from Texas.
Remember, everybody, to put where you're from so that we can range you out here. David down from the Seattle. From the far, we need somebody from Florida.
Holy schmoly. Let's see. Jimmy Fast is here in the room. Lori James from Upper Arkansas River Valley, hot and dry. River running about 2,000 CCS.
Is that high or low for you guys, Lori?
Gary Sandberg.
Oh no, that's high. She's in Colorado. She's around Salida.
Oh,
that's
hey.
Salida.
Gary Sandberg and David Dow from Seattle.
Oh,
cool.
Home of Microsoft.
You guys should get together
Starbucks,
for
right?
coffee at Starbucks.
and play around with your new version of Microsoft Windows.
Denise Bagley. Hello. Mary Green. Howdy. Been raining here for the past 2 days. Oh, well, that's good. Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown is in town. Southbound train from Alabama. There are a few hints in this chapter, and Eric Schmidt's going to tell us about them.
Make sure you type in what those hints are, Eric. Now that you made the commitment.
Right.
My wife has a couple of personalities. I hate if you. Yeah.
Shane
Sounds
McLaughlin.
like a normal marriage. She probably has the same perspective of you.
I don't know.
Ooh.
It's not like my marriage.
Oh, you don't have multiple personalities?
No.
Oh, okay.
Said the sad Toby.
This is the sense.
Now, what was that thing you started off today? I want to tell you about what's outside the plane today. What was that?
If you look out the left side of the aircraft,
You're
what
saying
you're
I
gonna
have
see
different personalities.
is the Grand Canyon.
All right. T.I. Mattis is here. It's good to
Hi,
see you
T.I.
again.
Nice to see you, T.I.
And Cindy Guess, her sister.
Did Cindy tell you that she won one of our giveaways?
That's probably why she's here.
Yeah.
Oh, she's like, oh, I got to get me one of those.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So hang on. You might win the cookbook and spatula. The hat, the tie, the smock, and the event is a full outfit all on itself. Okay. Great to be here. Ready to hear your thoughts on...
Skippy.
Oh, Skippy.
Andrew
West.
Is that a new name? I'm scrolling. Andrew
It's
West.
new for today, but I've seen it before.
Oh, okay. Oh,
See? Pops up
it's not,
sometimes. Doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop.
Hold on. Give me a sec. Give me a sec.
My eyes are going crazy. Keep going because T.I. Mattis and Cindy Guess need to go up. Because we said hello to them. How old was Skippy when he died? Eric Schmidt's asking this. How unusual for Eric Schmidt to ask us a question like that.
I think it was 50.
Jackie
Wait, is that right?
Nathan is
70,
here from
yeah.
the UK. Another UK person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to our U.S. programming. We know that you're one of our strongest allies, and we're looking forward to watching the Prince's wedding tomorrow. Oh, no, Saturday. Sorry.
It's been on the news all day here in the States.
Yeah. We live vicariously through the exploits of your royals.
Yeah, we wish we were there. Chad Maxwell. Aw.
Oh.
And Jimmy Fast thinks he was 50 when he died.
Yep.
Skippy. 50. Yeah, and so does Mary Green. And William Ortiz says Skippy drowned in Cozumel, Mexico in 90 feet of water. He was diving.
His weight belts on, and he was standing up.
Asset marketing. Forrest Fenn loved and misses his family. He honors them by telling these stories, which he hopes live on for 100 to 1,000 years. I think so. This flying washing machine barely lifted. Not being
Green hiker. Hi from North Carolina.
Shane says, funny how the flying washing machine barely lifted an inch off the ground and not being able to lift an inch off Hebgen Lake. Any similarities? Well, yeah, an inch.
So may I cover that little comment that Jimmy Fast started right there?
Go ahead.
Jimmy Fast says you use dive weights to make yourself neutrally buoyant, not to sink yourself. So anybody who has dove as a
Divin? Oh.
as a Nowie or a PADI diver, you find out that you put on your dive weights at the same time you put on your BC or buoyancy compensator, and that's to make you neutrally buoyant in water. You've got to, unless you're competing for a breath holding competition, there is no reason you should be in the water with your dive weights and not your buoyancy compensator, especially for an educated diver. So when that was said, I wondered if there's other things that we don't know about Skippy and whether or not that was a choice that he made. So it's always been curious to me how they describe his passing.
And Joel Lewicki is here from Minnesota.
So Joel, your gift, your last win is in the mail. You should have it, I think, tomorrow. Send a priority, so.
Dr. Brown says, it's always struck me as curious that Skippy is never shown in The Thrill of the Chase holding fish or fishing. He's holding a fish in his mouth.
Yeah.
Wasn't there one where all the family members were on one spread page?
There's one towards the end, but I don't remember. I remember the fish being laid out. I don't remember if Skippy's in it.
Maybe he was taking the pictures.
And maybe fishing
of course, they said he disappeared to Idaho for a few days, and that wasn't like unusual. So perhaps he just took off a lot.
Maybe fishing was someone or something that Forrest liked having between he and his father.
Why Must I Go is here. Hello.
Hey, Troy. Tell me when to scroll.
I'm at the bottom. Gary Sandberg has a question.
AGK, any ideas as to what alone in there refers to? Airplane, where he parked to hide the treasure chest, river. You know, the alone in there to me has always been a three-word description of what he did, right? So let's first exclude the idea that he had this original plan to somehow get the treasure in there and die around it, even though at some point he had to realize it was going to require 2 trips of any kind. So let's put that out, because I think that idea left him once he realized he was going to survive and he was going to have to do something else, come up with another plan. The alone in there indicates to me that just what it says. I don't think there's anything cryptic about it. He has been to this place. When he went the other times, he was alone. In the case that he took the treasure, he was alone. There was no one else with him. He didn't invite somebody to go along and help him carry the treasure. And I think it's an indication of that phrase that he's commonly used: two can keep a secret if one of them is dead, but also one can keep a secret if they don't share the secret with anyone. And I think that's what he means by that. He's the only one that knows exactly what the exact location of, quote, his special place, unquote. So I don't think it's any more complex than that. And I think as we have a video somewhere way back where we talked about an analysis of the various paragraphs, and we refer to that as a legal paragraph. And in that first paragraph, he establishes the fact that it's his treasure, he did this on his own, and he is of relatively sound mind. So to us, there was like in paragraphs 5 and 6, paragraph 1 is very much to us legalese, as opposed to anything to do with where he hid the treasure. Well, there's always the connection, but I think he's trying to establish things. He's trying to establish that he did this on his own, that he was of sound mind, and that he knew what he was doing. As I have gone alone in there, and with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret where, and hint of riches new and old. That to me is an indication that he wants someone to know that this is something he's doing of his own free will and accord. He wasn't forced to do this. So that's legalese to me. Establishes ownership. So there.
Moving on.
And if you look out the right side
We're
of the plane.
scrolling and we're
Oh,
scrolling.
we're scrolling. Say when. Oh, I'm at the bottom. Churchill.
Andrew West. Forrest says Skippy may have taken the wings off the plane, then trucked it back to Idaho. On page 64, we have 2 images of Skippy's car. He took the doors off of that. What does it mean?
Well, you have the photograph of of his car, and the doors are definitely off, and that was something that they did back then. I don't know. So, first of all, you have to make the assumption that the story about the aircraft from beginning to end, that is, he landed an aircraft on Hebgen Lake, and then not being able to take off from Hebgen Lake, he folded up the aircraft, took the wings off and trucked it back to Idaho. You have to believe that part of the story before you could make the comparison to the car. But wings and doors to me don't have, there doesn't seem to me to be any correlation. I'm sorry, I guess the answer is I don't see the correlation that you do.
All right. Rick Plank is here from Cincinnati. Mr. Greeley from Charlotte. And Shane is actually from Florida. Port
There we
Charlotte.
go. Seattle to Port Charlotte.
Yeah. And Holy Schmoly says, I think Skippy had some training but did not graduate from flying school. Probably. That happens frequently. People get started and then they're like, I don't have the money to finish or whatever. Put a pin on your map for St. Paul, Minnesota. I like that.
Yeah, we have a lot of people from
Jay,
Minnesota. Joel Louis
That's
from Minnesota.
Jenna, right?
Jenna. Yeah.
Jenna.
Oh, is that her?
I think Jay, Minnesota is Jenna.
Oh, it is, yes.
AGK from Eric Schmidt. I asked how old Skippy was when he died. What page does this chapter start on?
Page 50. We see where you're going with that, Eric.
Julie Smith. Query.
A query.
Have you pondered how many of the mildly odd portions of stories match up with lines in the poem, i.e., heavy loads, water high, and Skippy underwater with weights on? Any thoughts regarding this?
Wow. So, Julie, not only have I not pondered that one, I think it's an interesting possible prescription for analyzing. So what you have to do at this point. So let me answer your first question. I've not had thoughts. I think it's an interesting perspective on that. The question is, let's say, for example, that you've made this correlation between stories like Skippy dying with his weights on and heavy loads and water's high. Let's say you made the correlation between that part of the story and that part of the poem. What the question I always have to ask is, what do you do with it? How does that get you closer to finding the treasure? And so if something like this, like what you suggest, pops up in my head, the next question I ask is, how is that going to help me get closer to the treasure? And I don't have an answer to that one for you. I want to be able to answer these questions with, yes, that I've worked on that correlation and it ended up telling me where, exactly where I would find the heavy loads and water's high. But I haven't been able to do that. I haven't been able to take these correlations that we see a lot of and turn them into getting me closer to the treasure. That's the question I'll ask you. How does it help you get closer to the treasure?
Yeah. So Andrew West says 6,000 feet wouldn't prevent someone from landing and taking off on water. Am I wrong?
Yes. Although a water landing, because of the coefficient of friction between the pontoons and the water, is a more difficult takeoff. If you have a plane with the right performance, you can take off from 10, 12, 15,000 feet. Well, not 15,000. That would be difficult. And there's no lakes at 15,000 feet. I should never make absolutes like that, should I? But 6,000 feet certainly wouldn't be a high enough altitude, assuming you had a plane with enough performance to take off the water. What one has to assume is that this was apparently some old clunker that didn't have a lot of performance, and would prevent them just as a result of performance, not altitude. So it's really the ratio between the performance of the aircraft and altitude that would prevent you from doing that. But 6,000 feet shouldn't be enough. There are float planes that land higher than and take off higher than 600 feet. They just have the performance to do it.
So Dr. Brown wants to know, how can I order a cookbook, and are there any vegetarian items? And yes, there are vegetarian items. I mean, there's a lot of them. Calabacitas rellenas, chili fritters, chili relleno, guacamole, avocado dip Caribe. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, there are some. I'm not sure. I am not sure there are entrees that are necessarily.
Well, chili relleno is considered an entree.
Yeah, you could work it. I mean, you could walk into
Spanish
any
rice.
New Mexican restaurant here in Albuquerque and order
Pinto
an
bean pie.
enchilada plate without any meat. I mean, you can order.
Polenta.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And try to win it today, and then you don't have to order one.
Well, I will. I looked on Sean's Etsy store. I don't know where she has the order. You can order them online. I just don't know where. But I'll as soon as this show is finished, I'll call her and ask her, and then I'll put it into the description box below. I have Jason's ordering page and Sean's ordering page on Etsy there already, but I didn't see the book. But you can order them online. Or you can walk into practically any curio store in Santa Fe and find them.
They're just talking to each other. I'm looking for us.
Oh, okay.
They're talking about taking off in a plane. Okay. Journeyman wants to know about what year was this chapter about? Aviation in the 30s was a different animal than in the 40s.
Absolutely. You were still flying, open cockpit aircraft. So if this was about the time that Skippy was graduating from high school, you'd say he was probably around 17 or 18. He was born in 1936, so 46 plus.
36?
I'm sorry, 26. He was born in 1926. Add 10, that would be 36. Add 8, that would be 44. So 1944 or thereabouts, still at the end of World War II. So even if you got your hands on an aircraft at that point, it wasn't going to be a contemporary aircraft. That is, it's not going to be a 1944 model. It was some old clunker, so it probably didn't have the performance to take off from 6,000 feet.
Why Must I Go says, it's interesting that Forrest never shows his own graduation picture, only Skippy's. Different chapter, though. Ron Leake is here, and he says, wouldn't the local paper where he lived have the story?
Which story is that? Oh, the flying in story?
Perhaps.
Like I said, this is 1944. It's the war. I'm not sure it would be that big enough a story to make it into the newspaper. It was.
Or the washing machine airplane thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't be, it's just a bunch of people being weird. It's not a crime or anything.
Let's see.
And Dale Richards says, I think drawing nigh is the most important clue.
So Dale, since you brought it up, I am going to suggest that the most important phrase in the poem is not far, but too far to walk. And the reason I've come to that conclusion is that I believe if you can solve that riddle, everything else is going to fall into place. There was something that, let me see. Holy Schmoly says, Skippy's not in the fishing photos on page 122 to 123. So, yeah, holy guys, I don't think Skippy struck me as dedicated to the art of trout fishing as was Fenn and his father.
Or he could have been taking the pictures, or he could have been out gallivanting the way he seems to. Eric Schmidt says, what year was it when Forrest was 50? I don't know. Was it 1950?
No, he was born in 1930, so it would have been 1980.
80?
Yeah. And no, okay, so now I have to look at what page 80 has.
Oh.
I think Eric Schmidt is playing a little game.
I don't know what he's doing. He's thinking of his own little treasure hunt.
Yeah. Page 80 is My War for Me. we'll have to see if there's anything there when we get to that.
Andrew West says, I don't think Skippy flew a plane. I think Forrest made it up. Much more likely that Skippy went to Idaho to buy a car. That's why they had to drive it on the long ride home.
So here is my.
And might as well do that while we're at it.
Okay, hit it. Go ahead.
Dr. Brown says, thanks about the cookbook info. You guys are the best. We're both the best today. Thank you.
Wait, do that again so I can use it for our thumbnail.
Oh,
there we go. So I was about to.
Oh, that he doesn't think Skippy flew a plane. He thinks it was he bought a car.
So one of the things I believe about Fenn is that he has a propensity for embellishment. So to me, it's very likely, it could be possible that one day Skippy flew in to Hebyen with a pilot in an aircraft, right? That he was a passenger in that aircraft, and it did land on Hebyen Lake, and then afterwards the pilot realized, it was something that Skippy had convinced himself to do. And again, as a one who went through private pilot's training, it's not something that you can just jump into and fly off and land on the water. As a matter of fact, I was never certified. You have to be. It's a completely separate certification for water landings. So I tend to agree that there's something there. There's some element, some little, what you calls it, shred. I need another word here. Some little fragment of truth in this story. Like to me, all Fenn stories, there's some little fragment of truth that becomes memory, and then your memory expands it into the things that you need it to be for the story. So I think I tend to agree with you. I think there was a plane somehow involved. I'm just not sure it was involved in the way that it's described in the chapter. And he has the freedom to do that. It's his memoir, his memory.
Shane says page 52 of Skippy is the first real color break in the book. Skippy surrounded by rich yellowish brown color. He's sort of highlighted there, isn't he? Holly Perdis, which I think is a new name.
Perdas.
Okay, what he said. Was Skippy treasure diving in Cozumel as Creighton does? If so, was there ever mention of foul play?
Unfortunately, I don't know.
He was treasure diving.
He was treasure diving, but nobody would treasure dive with just their weight belts on. So there's something else going on there. So the fact that he was found in 90 feet of water with his weight belts on, and nothing else, as I understand it, would indicate there was some sort of something going on that we are not yet aware of, and we may never be aware of, because it would be Fenn that would have to share that information. So it is out of the ordinary, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it says, Why Must I Go says, page 52 postage stamp is also the only duplicate stamp. The duplicate is on
the
Golden Moor.
Yeah, and it's also one of those stamps that has the convoluted year. It's illegible. I made a note in my book on my copy of the book.
Mm-hmm. And Susan Heckenleibel, RF Hecky. Hi, everybody. Just checking in from Boots on the Ground, where we were just rained out of our search for today.
Okay, two things. RF Hecky, number one, tell everybody where you are, generally speaking. And number two, put in a link to your YouTube channel, because I know you just established a YouTube channel. You're taking a crack at establishing a YouTube channel. And honestly, you had me laughing my butt off the other night. You're funny.
Apparently Skippy was born in 1928.
Oh, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. He was born in 1928. That would have meant he died in 1978. I always confuse him. And it's Skippy in 28, Fenn, Forrest in 30, and June in 32. Sorry. Yes, you're right, Eric. Thank you. Oh, I got a compliment. Oh, we got a compliment.
We already did the thumbs up for it.
Oh, we did? No. This one right here.
Oh, from Julie Smith.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Thank
thought
you,
you meant
Julie.
from Dr. Brown.
What a nice thing to say. Dr. Brown asks, RF, are you in Tahiti? No, Dr. Brown, she's looking for the treasure. Unless somebody knows something about this treasure that I don't.
Shane says it seemed that Skippy was just that, Skippy, and all over the place, and very hyper, and at it nonstop. A fast-paced hustler. That's what I interpret. Skippy reminds me of one of my cousins.
Yeah, I had a brother like that. Who I outlived, coincidentally.
Julie says, it seems too coincidental that both postmarks are the same, but what to do with that info? Many possibilities.
Yeah, same thing. Same thing. You have to take each one of these and ask if I'm going to. It's an ROI calculation. If I'm going to invest time in this, how many feet, if you will, closer will I get to the treasure as a result? How many, how much closer to that treasure will analyzing all the postmarks? How much closer will it get me if I analyze all the postmarks? And the ROI, as I discovered, so when I first got into the search as a result of my background, I did the whole cryptography thing. Then I disassembled all the postmarks, and I spent a lot of time doing that. And at the end, I didn't have anything. I had some curiosities and some inconsistencies, but there was nothing that indicated to me that I was any closer to the treasure.
Andrew West says, maybe Skippy found treasure and was betrayed by someone on the team. Sounds like the antagonist in the Codex, the book by Preston Douglas. If Forrest told anyone the truth about Skippy, it would be Preston. Interesting. Well, Preston may have just intuited that and put that in the book.
I'm sure he had enough, he pulled enough. That's how you write, right? You get stories and you turn them into novels.
And Shane says, why did Forrest refer to Skippy as like a god and did not capitalize God accordingly? Well, God with a capital G is the one and only God, and God with a small g is like one of the many gods, like the Romans and the Greeks had many gods.
And Forrest has said before this that he doesn't think of himself as a religious person. A religious person would make that distinction. A spiritual person probably wouldn't. And because he says he's not religious, he's spiritual.
Maybe Skippy was D.B. Cooper flying in with the loot. What? in the Hebgen, on the Hebgen Lake.
Oh.
I think he's a little young for that at that point. Skippy was a daredevil and a show-off. He liked to get the crowds and the attention, just like his brother, Forrest. Focus on the numbers 50 and 15, but I never reaching a conclusion or pattern. Me either.
What was it?
Robert Walker at the bottom there.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, I think that's the key. After you're in this for a number of years, whether you've gone boots on the ground or not, boots on the ground helps, because a lot of times when you go on your early boots on the ground, it's based on these things like postmarks and cryptograms, etc., and you realize like that didn't help me at all. If anything, it cost me time and money that I could have otherwise invested in something else. So what I do, if I'm going to research something, let's use postmarks as an example, before I even, and this is something they do in the intelligence community, by the way, before I start the research and analysis, I sit down and establish kind of a mission and set of objectives and goals. I establish what is it that I expect to get out of doing this significant analysis on all these postmarks. And I'm just using that as an example. If you don't sit down beforehand and say, well, if I do analyze the postmarks, what is it that I expect to find that's going to help me get closer to the treasure? Is it going to be a set of geographic coordinates, for example. Maybe there's geographic coordinates hidden in the stack of postmarks that you can take it out. And if you're interested, I've taken all the postmarks that are in The Thrill of the Chase and all the postmarks that are in Once Upon a While, and I've put them on my blog. Just go to the photo albums and you'll see them there. And that's because I did that. I shot macro photographs of them and did that analysis. And I did it without asking myself, what am I getting out of this? And after kind of, 6 months over a winter, realizing that there's just nothing there. The mistake was not determining what the ROI was. What am I going to get out of it?
And Gary Sandberg says, I like your response. Okay, but how much closer will that get me to the treasure chest? And that's always been in the back of our minds. But as I'm doing the analysis on the book, and I get to that questions to ponder thing, and I have to keep asking for every chapter, is there anything in this chapter that's going to help me decipher the poem and get closer to the treasure? It's there's nothing concrete yet. I wish there was. But yeah, we have to keep asking ourselves that question. Let's see. Susan says, it killed me to have to leave my search spot today. And Eric Schmidt says, I know how you feel. Well, Eric, we do want to hear more about your search as well. And I know the last time we went out and we encountered the snow that made it impossible to get to where we wanted to start. It was disappointing, but at the same time, we knew it was only going to be a scouting trip for us. We didn't have to go that far. It did take us all day to drive there and then to drive back, but it wasn't like it was, days and days and days of driving. But the thing is, I had actually pulled tarot cards that day, and basically what they said was, what they indicated was, you're putting in work today. You're weeding the garden. You're not going to harvest any fruit today, but you are weeding the garden. You're putting in the necessary work to learn more about your search and your solution and where you're going to end up. So it all counts. Even if you have to leave your search area a little early that day, it all counts.
Yeah. And the other thing too is we have yet to go up. We have yet to use the words, I know exactly where the treasure is. We don't. We go up and we have some ideas that we have to explore and we look at, and we feel like each time maybe we get a little bit closer. We certainly learn more about ourselves. But we have yet to take go on a recon where the basis for the recon was, I know where the treasure is. I know precisely where the treasure is. And that way, when you get to a snowfield in a road that you didn't expect downhill and you don't want to play slalom, it's easy to say. If I've said often, if you know where the treasure is, go get it. Don't let anything stop you, including the weather. That's my attitude. But I don't know where the treasure is. So when I see a slalom on the road going downhill, it's easy for me to say, okay, let's go get dinner, guys.
Dale Richards says, maybe the 6,000 feet above sea level is a hint. Fenn said 5,000 feet above the level of the sea was a clue later. Maybe 6,000 feet above the level of the sea is an even better clue.
I can't argue with that, Dale.
Jay, Minnesota, why do you suppose Forrest Fenn doesn't say cap, tie, gown, and the event? Cap and gown versus hat and smock. It's just probably the way he grew up in Texas. They talk a little bit different.
I always remember calling it cap and gown.
Yeah.
I graduated in a cap and gown.
I don't know. You have to ask someone from Texas. Anybody got an answer for that? Why would you call it a hat and a smock? Does that sound familiar?
Sammy Smith says, hey, everybody, hit the like button.
Yay. AGK, without investigating all aberrations, you simply don't know what you will get.
That sounds like something Eric Schmidt would say.
Yeah, it does. Because he did.
Oh, okay.
Why Must I Go? Skippy, 1928. House was built in 1929. Forrest, born in 1930. June, born in 1932. And his dad is buying a new 1936 car, another new car in 1942, and expanded the house. Was he rich as a teacher? Well, he was a principal by that point.
If I remember correctly, he at some point he was upgraded to $4,000 a year. For that time, I don't have any sense of what was rich and what was not rich. I will tell you that I've never known in my entire life a rich teacher. It's not in the nature of the being, but I know a lot of teachers who are both practical and thrifty.
Holly says, my war for me leads me to believe Fenn's visit to the falls happened because altitude sickness, which is alluded to again with the flight over Philly. Wonder if Skippy had issues with the bends.
The only way you have issues with the bends are a byproduct of two things, the depth to which you're diving and the time that you spend at that depth. It starts at 1 atmosphere, which is approximately 33 feet. And then it increases both with depth and time. That doesn't sound to me like a situation where you dive with your weights and nothing else. He wasn't doing a formal dive. It wasn't, it wasn't a long-term deep dive that would result in the bends. Bends are a byproduct of the amount of nitrogen that builds up in your system, especially in your bones. That's what causes the pain. The nitrogen builds up in the joints of your bones and starts spreading the bones apart. That's what causes the pain.
I don't even know this, but I'm just going to say it anyway. It could be that Skippy, like his dad, may have been sick, terminally ill, and decided that was a good way to go. That was his special place. So we don't know. We can only suppose.
Yeah, I would rule out the bends as part of the case.
Eric Schmidt said a large bear, something about a large bear. A very large bear made me turn around for the final look. I was the only one there and decided it wasn't worth the risk.
That's why we think you're a really smart guy.
And make sure you tune in on Tuesday for the bear expert.
No, that's
not Tuesday?
Tuesday we're doing photographs, searcher photographs that they've shared with us.
Oh.
It's the following Tuesday.
Oh,
Cody Bear.
And 2 Tuesdays.
2 Tuesdays.
For Cody Bear. And we'll talk about bears. And you can share your story.
And Andrew, yeah, you sent me the pictures. Yes. So let me mention to everybody, next Tuesday, we're going to share photographs that other searchers have shared with us, their boots on the ground experience. If you'd like to be part of that show by sharing your photographs of your boots on the ground experience, send them to gypsykiss@gmail.com, and we will mention your name. And tell us a little bit about the photographs. A couple of the ones I got were just photographs, and I don't have any context. Give us some context. You don't have to give away your search area or anything, but give us some context so that we can share them with our viewers.
Dale Richards says his too far to walk is like 200 miles.
Big distance, Dale.
Yeah. Robert Walker says, with all the Yellowstone references and other potential where warm waters halt locations, do you feel that the New Mexico fishing regulations will hold the test of time, or is it expected that 1,000 years from now?
Oh, good question. There is one implementation of the New Mexico fishing regulations that has stood the test of time from the point at which Forrest moved into New Mexico to today. So I'm going to assume that there's nothing to me that indicates that it will change in 100 years. If it changes in 100 years, it'll be as a result of something far more dramatic and unexpected, which effectively would not only eliminate warm waters from the New Mexico fishing regulations, it would eliminate the consistency of whatever you imagine in the poem. It's going to be, I don't mean to imply cataclysmic, but it would be something like Yellowstone exploding. If Yellowstone explodes, then it's not just Yellowstone explodes, it's Book of Eli, and my current position on warm waters also goes away, but then it's not going to make any difference anyway. So it would require a cataclysmic event in order for it to change significantly. It's been, like I said, it's been consistent from 1972 to the present. So
Julie Smith says that her grandma used the word smock when she graduated. So,
I just remember us ordering caps and gowns.
but we're in New Mexico, not
Yeah,
Texas.
Mary Green is part of the 200-mile club. That's good. There's a lot of people that say, "Are you in the 200-foot club?" You know, they've been so. Mary Green and
Mile
Dale.
High Club. I've heard of that.
Yeah, no. Great. That'll get them started.
Oh, that's something different. But
Yeah.
you dress like a pilot, so
And
it
we're
made me
talking
think about that, I
flying.
guess.
Yeah, okay. Good
All
enough.
right.
That's enough.
Eric Schmidt had quite the adventure. Apparently, it started snowing. He wasn't in a four-wheel drive. Then he saw a bear, and he's like, "This is enough of this." So he left. And I'm glad because, yeah, we want you safe.
So here's my position on the matter. If I knew precisely where the treasure was, I would have crawled through the snow, shot the bear, got the treasure, and left. But I don't.
You don't.
I don't know where this,
If you
I
don't know,
where it
you
is.
don't know.
Yeah. Yes, happy it worked out with the
Jay
bear.
Haberl one. I'm not saying
Where
that.
do you say
I
that?
know I'm not saying that name right. Eberl.
Aberly?
Aberly. Sorry, we probably massacred your name there. But it says anything to Skippy making 24 with his hands in the picture.
Didn't notice. Hang on.
I didn't know either.
Apparently not, because I didn't notice.
24. Maybe he's 24 years old.
No, he was
His hands aren't even in the picture. Wait, which picture are we talking about?
oh. Well, if you don't count his thumbs, then it's really 22, I think. Yeah, Skippy was a member of a South Texas gang. No, I don't know. I would be making it up.
Susan says Fenn's use of the word one throughout this book is forced fit in so many places, as well as no one, which to me could mean zero. And what does that mean?
Yeah, you're going to have to help me because that falls into that category of responses that anything is possible. I just don't know where you go with it.
Dale Richards, does Fenn using the phrase above the level of the sea on the news as a clue versus above sea level used in the book strike you as odd? Is it normal for a single person to switch between them?
Does it? No, it doesn't strike me as odd. I think it's just the affectations of a person who is creative with his verbiage.
And he might have just been worried about being completely understood,
Well,
that words weren't misheard.
Journeyman, that's correct. You do wear your weights in shallow water. This was 90 feet of water. So perhaps he started in shallow water and the currents took him out. But, you know, the other thing, too, is as people who dive know, there's a quick release on that belt. Should you find yourself in that situation, the idea is to pull that quick release and let your belt sink to the bottom of to the floor of whatever ocean or water that you're in. So you can take some action. There's some action that can be taken to prevent you from drowning with your weights on.
And Shane wants us to call him crazy. You're crazy, Shane.
Shane,
What if Forrest Fenn can go to his rooftop and use a telescope or binoculars to check on the chest miles away on a rock side? I get the feeling he wants to keep real eyes on it. I get the feeling he wouldn't be climbing on a roof at his age.
yeah, we don't think that's a probability.
And he said, no, he hasn't gone back since he hit it. And I don't think there's any way he would know that. And he's kind of said he wouldn't know if the treasure was found unless somebody told him. And why must I go? Forrest's dad became principal in 1943, according to page 23. So it just seems strange that he had all that stuff to pay for and also took yearly trips to Yellowstone National Park.
I don't know the times and I don't know the gentleman. I can tell you that that based on what is described about their family. They were thrifty, and they obviously could afford to do what they've done. I can't tell you why. And further, I can't tell you what it means.
Maybe he was good friends with the guy who sold cars. Maybe he was good friends with your dad.
Let me see. He could have, well, except my dad was overseas during the war.
Oh. Toby's dad ran a dealership
The
in
car
New
dealership
Mexico.
in Santa Fe. Capital Ford, it's still there. Let's see. Brian Poppelman, AGK, I was falling asleep. Oh, thank you. Yeah, but that's a nice thing to say, Brian.
Because of my angel voice.
Oh, I was falling asleep, and then you started talking about the New Mexico Fishing Regulation solution, and he woke up right away. So you were talking about the New Mexico and Colorado border. No, I am talking about where warm waters halt.
Were you thinking about fishing when you wrote the poem?
Well, that's all I can say. Shane McLaughlin. There's some hint in there. No one is turning into the movie Blood Work. Good movie. Tuning into the movie Blood Work. I have no idea what that means. Thrifty, they ate meadowlarks. Yeah, that's pretty thrifty, isn't it? Okay, so now they're talking to each other. Okay, I think that's it for the day in terms of Q&A. Thank you very much, guys, for doing that. That was exciting and interesting. Let me switch.
Illuminating.
Illuminating. I've been illuminated. Okay, hang on. Let me go over to this. So first of all, tell us what we have the rest of the week. We don't have. Oh, we have.
We have tomorrow, just the facts.
Yeah.
Make sure you tune in and check that out. We're going to ask Toby a frequently asked question, and I thought it was pretty good. And then we have a little discussion about it. And so tune in for that.
Okay, yeah.
And then, of course, Sunday we'll have our lineup for next week. It should be a regular week with all our regular shows. So look forward to that. And then give us a thumbs up and like this video. Real simple to do. You can do it right now, in fact. Go ahead. I'll wait. Click.
Click that
Click.
like.
Okay. Thank you. Share this video with your social media contacts, your family, friends, and anybody else who might want to know more about the thrill of the chase. And then make sure you subscribe, click on the bell to receive notifications whenever we put out a live video or a recorded video, and you'll get notifications. Then, leave a comment. If you have a really good idea, want to
Post in
share
the
with
comments
us,
below.
let us know.
Yeah.
What else?
We want to give away something.
Oh, time for the giveaway.
What was that? Oh, it
at
sounded like a
that.
female wolf there.
Oh.
Okay, so here's the giveaway. The giveaway consists of my Aunt Lucy's cookbook. And you're going to love the recipes in here. They're so much fun. Although I have to admit to you, she has a recipe in here for peanut butter fudge that for whatever reason, I've never been able to get to work for me. So I don't know whether I'm not letting the sugar heat up high enough or whatever. But if you can get that peanut butter fudge to work, A, tell me what I'm doing wrong. And B, send me a piece because I used to love peanut butter fudge. So,
And they always say that when you come to New Mexico, they call it, it's supposed to be the Land of Enchantment, but here in New Mexico, we call it the Land of Entrapment because once you move here, you never leave, and it's pretty much because of the food.
yeah.
So if you've never had New Mexican food, you haven't lived. So make sure you stop in New Mexico and have something to eat, and if you can't manage that, cook something for yourself out of this cookbook.
And it's very likely that I have eaten a significant number of these recipes because the woman would just feed you every time you went over to her house. And so if you want, if you're thinking about doing a recipe and you'd like to know whether it's worth it, let me know and I'll tell you how I feel about it. Okay?
Okay, so are you ready to win that prize?
Here's today's.
It's not going to be easy.
Mini treasure hunt. We've had to make them, and so if you've already won, you can't win that. So winners can't. What's the phrase that they use?
Sharing is caring.
No, that is not the phrase.
Well,
So
it's
winners
true.
Can't
Let
participate.
somebody else win once in a while.
Previous winners can't participate. So
Yeah, okay.
So here's the trivia question. There's a street in Santa Fe named after my mother's side of the family. It intersects with another street that is named, has a name that also is mentioned in the poem. There is a, that the
Building?
house, there is a building on the corner of those two locations that used to be my grandfather's house, and now it is a business. I want you to post a link to the photograph of that business that shows its name on the front of the business, okay? And I'd like you to post that on the video in which I tell you the elements of my survival kit that I pack in with me, that I take out of my plastic tote and put in my backpack when we head out, okay?
Not the
And
one
the-
we did last Tuesday, but it's the survival kit.
Right.
The whole
It's one
kit.
of our early videos. So if you're the first one to post that link, then you win Aunt Lucy's cookbook. And we'll
And the
get
spatula.
more of these. I kind of like this as a giveaway, so we'll get some more
Yeah.
to give to you.
We enjoy sharing. Sharing's
Sharing is
caring.
caring.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here today, for all your questions and comments, and for all of our moderators who were present to keep us on our toes. Thank you for sharing your adventures with us and all of your photographs as well. And for Gypsy's Kiss, the book club, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.